Hello, fans of all ages. Thank you very much for tuning in to yet another episode of this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Happy New Year. Hope your new year was safe and fun, and I hope that your holiday season was everything you wanted it to be and more. We are 8 days into the new year, but with the amount of stories that we have, it feels like it's been 2015 for a long time. We have 4 new members of the Baseball Hall of Fame. We have some playoff football to go over, both college and professional, some controversial calls, some great football, some not so great football. We have a look at the 2015 NFL Draft. But first, sadly, ESPN lost an icon in Stuart Scott on Sunday morning at the age of 49. In his 21 years at ESPN, to say the least, Stuart Scott was a reporting icon. When he reported sports news on SportsCenter every day, every night, it felt like he was right next to you in your living room. The great thing about Stuart Scott is that he reported sports his own way. Nowadays, there are too many fixed highlights. There are too many scripted reporters. Stuart Scott did everything his own way with all of his catchphrases. And he did it. He was great at it. And he did all of this from 2007 to the day he passed. He was fighting cancer since 2007, and when you saw him on TV, you wouldn't even know it. Sure, he looked a little out of figure. He looked very skinny, especially at the ESPYs, but his attitude and his enthusiasm never left the way he probably felt physically. Through all of his rounds of chemo, he probably went through a ton of radiation. You would never know it by the way he would report sports live on SportsCenter. I'm 19 years old. I have watched Stuart Scott since I got into sports. It's been weird not seeing Stuart Scott lately because he was in the hospital. You saw that tribute on Monday Night Football. He's usually the guy that's standing out in midfield, and right now it's Steve Levy, who's doing an incredible job. But it's weird not seeing Stuart Scott, and it's weird that people are talking about him in the past tense like I am right now. It was weird to see the patches on UNC's jerseys last night, and it was weird to see all the moments of silence, and SportsCenter had an empty chair for Stuart Scott. It's a very strange feeling knowing that someone that you have watched all of your lifetime and someone who's been around longer than your lifetime is no longer on this earth. It's like when Derek Jeter retired, I didn't know what to do with myself because I don't know the Yankees without Derek Jeter, barring injuries. But now sports lost a reporting icon. He was the Walter Cronkite of sports. I don't know how the people at ESPN even worked the other day. Hannah Storm was the first to report his death on Sunday. And she was reporting the news with tears in her eyes. I can't believe how she got through it. It was unbelievable. I don't know how anyone at ESPN was able to work that day. Rich Eisen had a very emotional tribute when he found out that Stuart Scott had passed. Keyshawn Johnson was on the verge of tears on the countdown the other day. It was a very sad day in Bristol, as well as across the country. When you get a chance, watch Stuart Scott's ESPY speech from last year. Incredible speech, very motivational. If Stuart Scott were here right now, he wouldn't want us to say that he lost his battle to cancer. He said in his ESPY speech, when you die, you don't lose to cancer. Cancer doesn't beat you. You fight cancer, you beat cancer based on how you live. And I think despite cancer's dangerous toll on Stuart Scott physically, while he was fighting cancer, he probably knew he was beating it just because of the way he lived his life as a father, as a sports reporter, as one of the bravest men that a lot of people have seen on TV. So, with all that being said, pray for Stuart Scott, pray for his family, pray for his 2 daughters. May he rest in peace. And let's hope that he is cooler as the other side of the pillow up in heaven. Booyah. So Cooperstown has 4 new members of baseball immortality. The class of 2015 was announced on Tuesday, and it was the first time since 1955, 60 years, that 4 players were inducted on the same ballot, and the first time ever that included 3 pitchers. Randy Johnson, probably the greatest lefty I've ever seen. Pedro, one of the greatest pitchers in general I've ever seen. John Smoltz, phenomenal pitcher with the Braves, starter and closer. And Craig Biggio, arguably the greatest Astro of all time. Kudos to them. Big congratulations. That was my dream as a kid, and I'm sure there's nothing better than making the Hall of Fame. The 2 guys that I don't understand how are not in the Hall of Fame yet, Mike Piazza and Jeff Bagwell. If Mike Piazza wasn't randomly assumed by the Hall of Fame voters that he was on steroids, he'd be 90%. He'd get 90% of the vote on the first ballot. No question. Mike Piazza was the greatest hitting catcher of all time. Batted .308, had over 425 home runs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-time All-Star. He was in the MVP races for a ton of years. The guy was Silver Slugger at least 8 or 9 times. The guy was a phenomenal player. The guy should be in the Hall of Fame alone for that home run after 9/11. That was one of the greatest moments in baseball. And you're going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame because he had back knee? I have back knee. I'm not taking steroids. Everyone has had back knee once in their lives. See, what the Hall of Fame does, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit, they make their own rules. If they assume something, they don't vote. If there's something personal, they don't vote. If they don't want any first ballot Hall of Famers, they don't vote. If they were too good, they don't vote. Mike Piazza was the heart and soul of Queens. We had Derek Jeter in the Bronx. We had Mike Piazza across the borough. His nickname when he was on the Mets was the Monster because he was just a flat-out freak. Pitchers were scared of this guy. On-base percentage 377, OPS 922, slugging percentage 545. The guy was phenomenal. He had 10 seasons where he batted .300, and he blew away .300. 318, 319, 346, 336, 362, 328, 348, 303, 324, 300. The guy was one of the best hitters in baseball, let alone at the catcher's position. And he's not in the Hall of Fame because of suspicions. Bonds and Clemens, they like we all know they took steroids. Mike Piazza, we never thought that Piazza was taking steroids in the middle of his career. He was just a great hitter. The guy was an absolute freak. I mean, his percentage jumped from 62 last year to 70 this year, and 4 people made the Hall of Fame this year, first time in 60 years. So you think that it's probably going to be him and Ken Griffey Jr. next year, but it's been way too long. The guy is well deserving of the Hall of Fame. And now Jeff Bagwell, between him and Biggio, they're probably the top 2 Astros of all time. Biggio was top 3 MVP and won it 1 year. Career average 297, so just short of 300. He had 450 home runs. He had a few 300 seasons, including his MVP season where he hit 368, on-base percentage 408, and 540 slugging percentage. His OPS is 948. I don't look at Jeff Bagwell and I say this guy's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, when you know the whole strategy and the voting system of the Hall of Fame, you know who's a first ballot, who's second ballot, etc., etc. But Jeff Bagwell has been on the ballot for, I think this is his 5th year on the ballot. That's too long. And his numbers have not increased that much. If I'm a Hall of Fame voter, I'm voting for him, definitely. Now that these guys are in the Hall of Fame, good for them, great. There are some people who didn't vote for these people. Randy Johnson is the best lefty pitcher I've ever seen. He's probably the best pitcher I've ever seen in my lifetime. He and Pedro, I think, are top 2, and Clemens, which I'll get to a little later. Randy Johnson was a scary pitcher. He would literally frighten hitters. Hitters would not look forward to facing him. Randy Johnson he threw a perfect game at the age of 40. Pedro Martinez at one point, he had the best fastball, best changeup, best curveball in the sport at the same time, and people didn't vote for him. Pedro, how old was he in the 2009 World Series? 37, 38? Sure, he didn't pitch great, but he pitched very well. He pitched pretty well for a 37-year-old guy in Yankee Stadium where they hate Pedro, and they didn't vote for him. I have come to accept the fact that probably no one will be unanimous, and if anyone should be, I think the first person to be unanimous should be Mariano Rivera, because he is undoubtedly the greatest at his position. But how can no one be unanimous? I get it. Unanimous is a big word, 100%. You don't see unanimous MVPs too often or Rookie of the Years. It doesn't happen very often. But this unanimous is different. People don't want there to be a unanimous Hall of Famer. Babe Ruth, not unanimous. Hank Aaron, who I think is the greatest baseball player of all time, not unanimous. Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Cy Young, Ty Cobb, all these guys, people did not vote for them, which is one of the main reasons why there aren't unanimous players today. Some voters had the concept, if Babe Ruth, if Hank Aaron, if Cy Young, if Ty Cobb weren't unanimous, how are guys like Randy Johnson and Pedro and how is Derek Jeter going to be unanimous over these guys? Because Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, Ty Cobb, Cy Young, I think are top 4 greatest baseball players of all time. If people think that Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron are the top 2 and they weren't unanimous, why would they vote someone like Derek Jeter or Randy Johnson or whoever was in today's ballot? Why would they be unanimous? In a way, that does make sense. Because people didn't vote for those guys. Why would they vote for these guys? But let's take a look. 1936, first class of the Hall of Fame. This is 2015. That was 79 years ago. 79 years ago. I don't think anyone who voted back then is even alive today. The Hall of Fame doesn't like change. Times have changed. The sport has changed, which I'll get into again later. But everything in this world, everything in this sport is changing. How come the Hall of Fame can't accept that? Sure, Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, all of those guys who we all consider to be on the Mount Rushmore of baseball, of course they deserve to be unanimous. I can name 10 guys who have been in the last 4 Hall of Fame ballots that should be unanimous. But because the guys back then weren't unanimous, they're not today. Some people think that the number of votes is an issue. And it can be. But sometimes it's not. Tim Kurkjian said on ESPN that it took him a month to fill out his ballot. He said that 20 players, in his opinion, were Hall of Fame worthy. Unfortunately, he had to bring 20 down to 10. I'm sure he's not the only one who had 20 Hall of Fame-like players on his ballot. But the thing is, some people don't vote for anyone. And I get that this is the one thing about the Hall of Fame that has changed. People don't vote because of the steroid era. There was a guy, I forgot what his name was, but he said that he would not vote for Mariano Rivera because he played in the steroid era. He admitted that he wouldn't vote for anyone who played in the steroid era. And he gave up his vote because he said he would not vote for Mariano Rivera. Props to him for knowing that his vote is flawed. But that same guy was weirdly obsessed with voting for Jack Morris. What was it, the last 2 or 3 years on his ballot? Jack Morris, if you consider the steroid era to start in 1991, which is the year that the steroids were banned, Jack Morris played in 1992, 1993, 1994, and this guy voted for Jack Morris. He played in the steroid era, therefore, he's already being a hypocrite. He said he wouldn't vote for players who played in the steroid era. Jack Morris played in the steroid era. I'm sure the guy meant that the majority of his career had to be having played in the steroid era. But know your research before you even say anything on the record. Last year, Dan Le Batard had either last year or 2 years ago, he had a Hall of Fame vote, and as a Hall of Fame voter, he knew that the entire system was flawed. So what did he do? He went to Deadspin.com, and he said, look, your readers are going to do a poll. And they filled out a poll, and they filled out one person who they thought was most deserving of the Hall of Fame. And when they voted, they gave their poll results to Dan Le Batard. Dan Le Batard wrote down his top 10, I guess, of the top 10 answers, wrote his name on the ballot, and boom, put it in. The Hall of Fame suspended Dan Le Batard's vote for the next year's draft, next year's voting election, because they thought he had flawed the system. The system has already been flawed. I think Dan Le Batard did the right thing. I think the Hall of Fame should include fans, because at least they know what they're doing. The baseball writers are absolutely clueless. You know what's weird? People who don't vote for Randy Johnson or Pedro Martinez or Babe Ruth or whoever, they're probably the guys who I'm not going to say think, but I'm going to say who voted Jeff Kent and Mike Mussina and Don Mattingly and all these guys who you don't look at them and say they're one of the greatest players of all time, but they vote for them first ballot. Why? Because they know that Randy Johnson and Pedro and all these guys are going to be in the Hall of Fame anyway. So that's why they don't vote. They don't vote for these guys because they're going to be in the Hall of Fame anyway. And then they vote in these slightly above average players. I think that is the worst way to look at this. If I were a Hall of Fame voter, I would be voting Biggio, Piazza, Bagwell, Randy Johnson, Pedro, Smoltz, Clemens, and Bonds. And I'll get into Clemens and Bonds in a moment because that's a whole different story. My Hall of Fame ballot has 8 guys. And to tell you the truth, I think those are the only 8 guys on this ballot Hall of Fame worthy. I don't think Nomar is worthy. I don't think Mike Messina is worthy. I don't think Tim Raines is worthy. I don't think Don Mattingly's worthy. Actually, I think I would put Edgar Martinez on that list also. 9 guys on my ballot. For me, the number of votes wasn't a problem. And the steroid era, I guess you could say it was a problem to an extent, with the exception of Bonds and Clemens. Here's why I'm putting Bonds and Clemens in my vote. Bonds and Clemens were phenomenal. Steroids didn't make them great. I think they were already amazing players before steroids. Bonds, before he got jacked out of his mind, when he was with Pittsburgh, people were already saying that this guy's going into the Hall of Fame. Roger Clemens, when he was on Boston and Toronto, people were already saying this guy was a Hall of Famer. Without steroids, Barry Bonds probably would have had about 660 home runs. Without steroids, Roger Clemens, maybe not a 300-game winner, but he probably has well over 3,000 strikeouts. And he's probably still one of the most dominant pitchers, I think. That's why I put them in. Guys like Gary Sheffield, Palmeiro, Sosa, McGuire, steroids made them great. So that's why I'm not voting for them. A while back, my dad told me he would never take me to Cooperstown. That has since changed because of a whole family trip. But I don't blame him for not wanting me to take me there. The whole system is flawed. The whole steroid era. Voters don't want to put people in who have a sniff of steroids, and believe me, I get that. I see nothing wrong with that. And I understand why people don't want to put Bonds and Clemens in. They took steroids. At least that's what 99% of the people think. I get it. But, and another thing, I get that the Hall of Fame is about respecting the game and playing the game cleanly. I'll get into cheating in a moment. Let's talk about respect first. Hall of Fame voters like to put in guys who respect the game. Okay. Ty Cobb, first class of the Hall of Fame. Racist, had numerous altercations with African Americans. Adrian Anson, one of the greatest players of the 1880s, refused to take the field if the opposing team included black players. Charles Cominsky tried to pass off an African American player as a Cherokee. Ty Cobb and Tris Speaker have been reported to be in the KKK. Ty Cobb was charged with attempted murder. Also, Ty Cobb and Tris Speaker even fixed games. They had a whole game-fixing scheme. Now let's get into cheating. Steroids, cheating, I get it. But you know what else is cheating? Doctoring baseballs. Gaylord Perry, class of 1991, spitballs all the time. He wrote a tell-all book about it after his retirement. In my opinion, doctoring baseballs is worse than steroids. Steroids, at least it's your body. I mean, steroids, you can get big. Lifting, you can get big. The baseball, it's supposed to be a 5-ounce ball, and you're not supposed to fix it at all. And he did, and a lot more people did. You want to talk about cheaters? Let's take a look at the guys who actually cheated in game with the equipment. Not what they're doing to their bodies. They're hurting their own bodies. That's their own fault. They want to take that risk, go ahead. Be my guest. Live unhealthily. That's not my problem. That's your fault. And can we please put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame, please? It's been 25 years. We all know what he did, but he didn't do anything to hurt the game. Sure, what he did was bad. He bet games that he managed, and he had a win now, literally meaning win one game mentality because of the way he bet. And sure, that's bad. But did he cheat? No. Did he fix games? To our knowledge, no. The Hall of Fame, the All-Star game is in Cincinnati this year. Rob Manfred is letting Pete Rose help out with all of the festivities. Personally, I think at the All-Star game or during the Home Run Derby, something. During those 2 days, I think that Rob Manfred is going to make an announcement that Pete Rose is no longer banned from baseball and that he is eligible to make the Hall of Fame. My opinion, not sure if it'll happen, but whether it happens or not, put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. You want guys that respected the game. As a player, definitely Pete Rose. As a manager, not so much because of the way he bet, but if you want to tell your kids to look up to a baseball player, I have 2 people in mind. 3 people. Derek Jeter, Mike Trout, Pete Rose. Pete Rose played the game with more hustle than I think anyone has ever played. I think Pete Rose is the hardest working baseball player that the world has ever seen. So put him in the Hall of Fame. So the college football playoff semifinals have come and gone, and I'm going to be honest, I am a little surprised. I knew Oregon would win. I knew they would win easily. But I did not think that it would be a 40-point victory. And I did not think that Ohio State would beat Alabama. The Oregon and Florida State game, it was just clear that Oregon's offensive system is too much for almost anyone to handle. You can give anyone 3 weeks of preparation and it's not going to work. And yeah, what was it? I think the third quarter, Florida State's defense was not all that great, but that system is almost unstoppable. And I'm really excited to see that system go to work against Ohio State in the national championship game. A, as a Michigan fan, I just want Ohio State to lose. And B, that Oregon offense, how can you not enjoy watching it? It's one of the greatest offenses in college, and if you put it in the pros, it works just as effectively. As for Alabama, I did not think they were all there against Ohio State. I thought that they were expecting to win, and I thought that they took the game not as seriously as they should have, and I think Ohio State simply just wanted it more. I think they wanted to doubt everyone that thought that they were going to lose, because Alabama was easily favored, and I think they wanted to prove something, and they definitely proved it, and I'm very excited for Monday's national championship. I think Oregon takes it home because I think that offense is, if you can beat a team by 40 that hadn't lost in 29 straight games, then what do you think they're going to do against Ohio State? Speaking of Alabama and Florida State, Jameis Winston announced he was declaring for the draft, as did Amari Cooper. I think Amari Cooper is going to be an unbelievable NFL receiver. I mean, if Mariota didn't exist, Amari Cooper was the Heisman winner this year. Amari Cooper, his yards after catch is unbelievable. His speed is unreal. The guy is the greatest receiver in college football right now, and I think he's going to fit into an NFL team just fine. He has a big body, he's fast, he has great hands, he has great route running, and he gets away from defenders before he gets the ball and way after he gets the ball. He is going to be very fun to watch in the pros. As for Jameis Winston, we probably won't even see him in the pros. If this guy stays out of trouble, he will be a solid NFL quarterback. He is a really good quarterback. I think right now Mariota is better than Winston. Who's going to be the better NFL quarterback? I have no idea, because it will be tough for Mariota to transition from an Oregon system to a I guess average NFL system, because not many teams run Oregon system. So it will be tough for Mariota to transfer. So I wouldn't be surprised if Winston performed better than Mariota. That is, if Mariota even declares for the draft, which he probably will. I think early on, Winston will probably outperform Mariota, but I think once Mariota will get settled in his new system, I think he'll exceed. Not sure who will have the better career. They're both great quarterbacks. I'm excited to see them both play. And honestly, I hope Jameis Winston does play. If he stays out of trouble, he's going to be very fun to watch in the pros. He and Mariota have been awesome to watch this year. They're both very exciting players. I'm also very excited to see how teams will, assuming Mariota declares for the draft, I'm excited to see how teams approach who gets picked first and why. I think that as a guy who believes Mariota is better right now, remember, if Jameis stays on the field and stays out of trouble, I think he will transition easier because of the way Oregon's system is. But again, are you going to waste, let's say the Tampa Bay Bucks, they have the first overall pick this year. Are they going to waste that first pick if Jameis can't even stay on the field for more than a season? Great talent, but a bad behavior. And that's going to hurt you, especially when you need a quarterback. But anyway, back to the game on Monday. I think Oregon wins it. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I would love to see what Ohio State would do if they still had, Braxton Miller. Because right now, that third-string quarterback is playing very well. And it almost makes you wonder, would the Alabama game have been a blowout? Would Braxton Miller have played terribly? You never know, and that's the great thing about sports. Moving on to the older guys of the gridiron, the divisional round will start on Saturday. The games on Saturday are the Ravens at the Patriots and the Panthers at the Seahawks. Ravens coming off of a win against the Steelers without Le'Veon Bell, and I think that meant a lot to the Ravens. The Steelers' leading rusher last week, Josh Harris, never heard of this guy, 9 rushes, 25 yards. Antonio Brown, always consistent. He had 9 and 120, but Roethlisberger couldn't really find the back of the end zone. He only had 1 touchdown, threw for 300-some yards, and completed 31 of 45 passes, but that run game killed them. With Le'Veon Bell, I think this game goes a whole different way. At halftime, it was 10-9, and then it was all Ravens the rest of the way. They scored 10 in the third quarter, 10 in the fourth quarter. Steelers got shut out in the third quarter and scored 8 in the fourth quarter. But this game was pretty much a no contest after the second half. Flacco played well. Torrey Smith caught a touchdown. And this is what we've gotten from pretty much every AFC North team this year. You either get a great team or a bad team, and the bad Steelers showed up. And that got the Ravens moving on to New England this weekend. As for the Panthers and Cardinals game, that was one of the worst games of football I've ever seen. Sloppy. Cardinals had 70-something yards of total offense throughout the entire game. Unbelievable. If it weren't a playoff game, I would have shut the game off. I mean, no one knew how to punt. The special teams was ridiculous. Cam Newton, though, didn't look too hurt. Jonathan Stewart has been, besides DeMarco Murray, over the last month and a half or so, Jonathan Stewart has been the best running back in the league. 24 carries, 123 yards, and a touchdown. Cam Newton throwing for just short of 200 yards, but a touchdown. Ryan Lindley might be the worst quarterback I have ever seen. The running game without Ellington, and a healthy Cardinals team would have been great to watch in the playoffs, but everyone got hurt. They were down to their third-string quarterback. It was just a complete mess when Carson Palmer and Andre Ellington got hurt. We pretty much all knew that Carolina was going to win this game. And now they are moving on to Seattle to play the 12th man on Saturday night. I think the Panthers caught a break against the Cardinals. I don't think they're going to perform well against the Seahawks. I think Jonathan Stewart will play well, but he's not going to be the Jonathan Stewart that we've been seeing for the last month, especially against the Seahawks defense and that 12th man. I think the Seahawks are just a completely different team at home. They were 7-1 at home this year, and their only loss at home this year was to the Cowboys, who were 8-0 on the road. I think the Seahawks are favored by 11.
I think that is just about right. I think Seattle is going to dominate this game for all 60 minutes. As for the Ravens and Patriots, we have seen this game before in the playoffs over the last few years. I think the Patriots, again, 7-1 at home, 12-4 overall. I think the Patriots are going to blow the Ravens out of the water. They're favored by 7. I would take the spread and some. Over-under's 48. I would go over on that. I think the Patriots are going to put up at least 35. As for the games last Sunday, we will start with the Bengals and Colts. Easy bet on this one. The Colts were favored by 3.5. The Bengals were without A.J. Green with a concussion. Andy Dalton is just a mediocre quarterback in the regular season and a terrible quarterback in the postseason. Andrew Luck, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The Colts have a phenomenal team. I'm very excited to see Andrew Luck against the Colts this week. Against the Broncos this weekend. I think that's going to be a great game. You'll hear my opinions on that pretty soon. The Lions and Cowboys. Cowboys, I guess you could say they got lucky, but they are a good football team. DeMarco Murray, not the greatest game, but Tony Romo, he is playing well. He has been playing well for all season. His December and January numbers this year have been phenomenal, the best of his career. And if you know me, you know I am a Giant fan through and through, but I have been saying that I like Tony Romo. I have always liked him. I think this guy gets unfairly criticized all the time. Yes, he is notorious for being a choker. I get it. But Tony Romo is, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the NFC East, and he could be a top 10 quarterback in the league. I did not watch this game. I was working, but the refs, I actually have not seen that pass interference picked up that whole play. I actually have not seen any highlights of this game whatsoever. But I know what happened. You can't pick up I understand picking up flags, but not that late. Not after both teams move down the field. Not after the entire world knows or thinks that this game is in a whole new situation. You can't pick up the flag, what was it, a minute after they called the penalty originally? You cannot do that. Again, picking up flags is a common thing. I understand it. I understand that you get whistle happy and you make a call that is wrong, but again, I have not seen this play, but no matter what happened, whether it was a penalty or not, you cannot pick up that flag that late in the game. That late after the initial call. But despite what the refs had to say, the Cowboys defeated the Lions 24-20, and they are playing at Lambeau against a possible Aaron Rodgers-less Packers. I got to tell you, if Aaron Rodgers plays, the guy's calf is torn up, literally. And he hasn't practiced all week, but injured or not, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, if not the best. I think if Aaron Rodgers plays, this game is a blowout. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't play, I think that the Cowboys get a little bit of a chance, but either way, I think Green Bay is going to win this game. If Aaron Rodgers is in, take the Green Bay spread. If he's not in, I would probably take the Green Bay spread anyway. I think they're a much better team than the Packers. I think the 8-0 at home is a lot more dangerous than the Cowboys 8-0 on the road. The Packers put up, 40 points a game? I don't think the Cowboys can put up 40 points on the road at Lambeau. The Cowboys play in Dallas. They're indoors practically. They play in a warm stadium. And Green Bay, look at it outside. Have you been outside yet? It's 12 degrees across the entire country. Lambeau is going to be cold on Sunday, and it is going to hurt the Cowboys immensely. I think they're going to feed DeMarco early, and I think they're going to feed him a lot because of the cold, but I think the Packers are going to do just fine. DeMarco Murray is a great running back, but he's not going to be that great on Sunday against the Packers. Packers win easy, whether Aaron Rodgers plays or not. The Colts and Broncos will be the second game on Sunday. Broncos are 8-0 at home. Colts are 5-3 on the road. The Colts have not been a great team this year. Quick run through of their schedule. They lost against Denver. They lost against the Eagles. They went on a 5-game win streak, but they beat Houston, Baltimore, Tennessee, Jacksonville. 3 of those teams did not make the playoffs. They beat the Bengals, but the Bengals were an up-and-down team. They were slow to start. They lost at Pittsburgh. They beat the Giants, not a playoff team. They lost against the Patriots. They beat Jacksonville. They beat Washington. They beat Cleveland. They beat Houston. They beat Tennessee. Two of those wins came against teams who made the playoffs. Their losses, they lost at Dallas 42-7. They lost against New England. They lost against Pittsburgh. They lost against Philadelphia. They lost against Denver. They are 0-4 against, 4 of their 5 losses came against playoff teams. And I think that is going to happen again. Andrew Luck is phenomenal, but Peyton Manning is even more phenomenal. And we all know about Peyton Manning's postseason struggles. I don't think that happens on Sunday. I think the Colts are a good team, but they're playing one of the best teams in the league, and the Colts have not played well against good teams all year. Denver's favored by 7. I would take the Denver spread on that. Over-under's 54. You figure that Peyton and Luck are probably going to both have 2 or 3 touchdowns each. You figure C.J. Anderson's probably going to run one in. You figure Dan Herron and Trent Richardson and all of the Colts running backs this year will probably have a rushing touchdown. I would take the over, but more importantly, I think the Broncos and the Patriots will meet up in the NFC Championship, and I think we're going to see Packers-Seahawks in the NFC Championship. If that goes how I think it's going to go, I think the Seahawks are going to the Super Bowl. I think the Seahawks are a great team, and they are dangerous at home. I said whoever wins the NFC, whoever gets home field throughout the NFC is going to make the Super Bowl. And I assumed it was going to be either the Packers or the Seahawks. If the Packers had home field, I think they win this game. But they don't. It's the Seahawks. I think they are going to the Super Bowl if they win. And no matter who they play next week, if they win on Saturday, no matter who they play, I think they're going to the Super Bowl. I think they repeat as champions. I've said Patriots, Seahawks since August. I think that happens again. Patriots would have home field against the Broncos next week. They would have home field throughout. I think if the Patriots win on Saturday, they will win next week. Seahawks, Patriots, I've said it since August, July. I think Seahawks defeat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. That's my opinion. We'll see what happens. We don't know what's going to happen. Games are not played on paper. They're played on the field. All right, that's going to do it for the 15th episode of this podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in once again. Congratulations to the Baseball Hall of Fame class of 2015. All well-deserved. Ladies and gentlemen, Happy New Year. Stay warm, please. It is very cold outside. Some great football this weekend, and on Monday with the College Football National Championship. Going to be a fun couple of days in the sports world. Rest in peace, Stuart Scott. You were unbelievable. You will be missed. It's not goodbye. We'll see you later. Take care, everybody.